Welcome back to the channel. I'm super happy to have you here. My name is Conor McMillen and I'm an IFS-trained life coach. Let's jump right into today's video. We're gonna make a distinction between feeling our feelings versus feeling with our feelings. And this very much relates to IFS, but it's also gonna be a little bit different than a lot of IFS protocols that maybe you've heard about before. So what is this distinction we're talking about here? Feeling my feelings versus feeling with my feelings. From a part's perspective, we're talking about the difference between being overwhelmed by a part that is feeling a lot and being in self-energy and feeling with that part. So there's a huge difference in those two things. And if you've done any IFS work or you've done any work in the self-awareness arena, you have felt the distinction. You have already felt the difference, I'm sure. When a part overwhelms us, that means that we don't have access, at least easy access or conscious access to self-energy. And self-energy, again, reminder, calm, curious, compassionate. It's a state that we are attempting to be in as much as possible. It's really where we want to lead from. Thus comes the term self-leadership. So when our capacity of self is suppressed or absent, we can't find it, and there's a part here that's feeling a lot, then we are basically the part. It feels like we are just the part. And it can be very overwhelming, especially depending on what part it is. What we want to do, ideally, is find a little bit of self, help that self-energy grow, and then we want to engage with the part that is feeling very overwhelmed. And this is where we're going to look at a slightly different way of doing it than strictly IFS protocols. So there's a myriad of ways to engage with a part that's very helpful, growth promoting, creates trust, creates safety, and ultimately will help integrate this part. And we've talked about some of those things in other videos, particularly using curiosity to engage in questions, allowing that part to feel seen and understood, which can eventually lead to a natural sense of compassion for that part. That once shared can be incredibly relieving to that part. So that is one method, and that is very IFS based. The other option is to not do any of that and to simply allow that part to feel its feelings in a safe way. How can a part feel its feelings in a safe way? It needs an adult in the room. It needs self-energy to contain it and to hold it and to feel with it. So I really like to think about children in regards to how we relate to ourselves and to our parts. Because indeed, we have many child parts inside of us. And they need the exact same thing that a physical child outside of our system needs. So when a child is very, very overwhelmed, it can be very helpful to bring curiosity and ask them questions. What happened? How are you feeling? Can you tell me more about that? To understand them and then to have compassion for them. And that often will soothe them and help them integrate their emotional experience. But even before that process happens, there can be a very important step here that sometimes we may miss in trying to just go through the protocols of IFS. And that is allowing the child to just feel their feelings in a safe way. So the difference between a child having an intense emotional experience on their own and a child having an intense emotional experience with you in the room, physically holding them, are worlds apart. Worlds apart. So the invitation in this video is to use that step. You don't have to always use it, but feel into it and know that that's always an option. You don't have to just all of a sudden jump into a bunch of questions and running through some protocols that you've integrated as a way to heal and to grow. You can get to that. But sometimes the very first step is giving that child inside of you a safe space to feel their feelings. So an example of this is you feel very overwhelmed with sadness, maybe loss, maybe grief. If you are completely overwhelmed with sadness and loss and grief, it can be a very intense emotional experience. If you can allow yourself to see that grief, that loss, as a part of you, bring self-energy around it and hold it with you. Then you can feel with that part. And you can actually feel the grief and the loss and the sadness, which, by the way, is incredibly good for your nervous system to have a safe place to fully feel an emotion and really be with it, and be with it with love and compassion, patience and spaciousness. So see, the next time, if you have an intense emotional experience, if you can bring your self-energy into the room, bring your adult self into the room, find potentially that child part inside of you to hold and feel with that part. Once that is done, absolutely you can engage in some of these other IFS protocols. So I reference something like this in my video regarding fear. And in that video, what I suggest is that you feel the fear all the way through. And if you need to, and I absolutely encourage you to use IFS protocols through that process or at the end of that process, that's fantastic. But it's an example of this exact type of work I'm talking about here. Fear is a part of you. It's probably a young part of you. And if there's an adult in the room that can hold it and feel with it and allow the fear to move through the body, move through the nervous system, you may not have to do any of the other protocols because you've just had a very, very healthy emotional experience. I hope that video was helpful. Really encourage you to leave your comments below. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, definitely do that because I'm making videos all the time. And you can also check out internalfamilysystems.org for more. Have a beautiful day.